Recently, I was at an action in Boulder, Colorado to stand in solidarity with the natives at Standing Rock who are blocking the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. This action took place in front of a Wells Fargo branch to pressure Wells Fargo to stop funding the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, and also to encourage customers of Wells Fargo to close their accounts in protest of Wells Fargo funding the project.
So I want you to know that I'm closing out 2 savings accounts, personal checking account, and my business account.
This action took place right on the Pearl Street pedestrian mall in downtown Boulder, a quaint street with lots of small shops and restaurants and a steady stream of well-dressed passers-by. The mountains that overlook Boulder could be seen in the background. The sun was shining. Other than this action in front of Wells Fargo, it was a peaceful and quiet day in beautiful Boulder, which is pretty much the norm here. At this action, in addition to the small crowd standing outside the bank, 2 people locked themselves to the front doors of the bank. They had U-locks locked around their necks and through the handles of the front doors. When I imagine the perspective of many of the passers-by who were going about their day during the action, I imagine that these 2 people who locked themselves to the front doors of the bank seemed extreme, unreasonable, and disruptive of the peace that we enjoy in Boulder. Living in the bubble of an economically prosperous and peaceful town that has easy access to clean running water and electricity, I myself sometimes find it easy to feel complacent here. Yet, I also consider the choices and actions of these 2 who locked themselves to the front doors of the bank in the context of the 8,700 oil pipeline leaks that have occurred in the United States since 1986. I consider their actions in the context of the devastating environmental impacts and the toxicity of each of those pipeline leaks to humans and to all life. I consider their actions in the context of the Dakota Access Pipeline being a threat to the only water supply of the Standing Rock Sioux. I consider their actions in the context of the 17 million other people who rely on the Missouri River for their water. I consider their actions in the context of the Native Americans at Standing Rock blocking the construction of a pipeline across lands that they consider to be sacred. I consider their actions in the context of a pipeline being built that will allow even more fossil fuels to be extracted from the earth. I consider their actions in the context of our climate that sustains life on this planet being destabilized by the burning of fossil fuels. When I consider all of that, suddenly the actions of these 2 locking themselves to the front doors of the bank seems much less extreme to me. In fact, these 2 people and their actions start to seem to me to be quite reasonable. A perspective that these 2 are being unreasonable and extreme depends on living in a bubble of peace and prosperity. It depends on the invisibility of all that was being protested in this action. What does seem extreme and unreasonable to me? It seems extreme and unreasonable to threaten or outright destroy supplies of clean water. It seems extreme and unreasonable to build a pipeline that has a high risk of spilling toxic oil onto the earth and into water. Burning fossil fuels that cause our climate to destabilize seems extreme and unreasonable to me. Building another pipeline that will enable even more fossil fuels to be burned seems extreme and unreasonable to me. It seems unreasonable to give the values of natives whose ancestors lived on this land for thousands of years less importance than the values of those who have only lived on this land a relatively short time. It seems extreme and unreasonable that those with political power seem to value the myth of money more highly than the physical reality of clean water. What begins to seem unreasonable to me is that fewer than 100 of us were at the action in front of Wells Fargo, and that only 2 were locking themselves to the front doors of the bank.
Water's life. Minnie Pichon, I stand with my sisters and brothers in Standing Rock.
I have long been committed to living my life in a way that is in alignment with what I value. As a result of inspiration from the water protectors at Standing Rock, the election upset, and a couple of personal shakeups in my life recently, my commitment to living in alignment with what I value and what I believe to be precious in the world has grown much stronger. This doesn't mean that I'm feeling called to lock myself to the doors of a bank or get arrested in protest, but it does mean that I'm feeling called to live even more deeply in alignment with what I believe in and what I want for the world. I'm paying more attention to what I implicitly support through my choices. Some of what I used to believe to be important is seeming much less important when compared to our water, to our land, and to humanity and life continuing to thrive on this planet. I am more deeply committed to offering myself in the best way that I can, to being of service, and to doing so visibly when I hope that doing so can have a positive impact. I'm going to end here with asking you a few questions that seem to me to be important for everyone to ask themselves right now, given recent events in the world. Are you living your life in a way that is in alignment with what you value? What are you supporting with the ways that you spend your time and your money? What are you standing for in your life? What do you care about? And what are you doing with that care?